Okay. Thank you for agreeing, Jamie, to talk to me today about breaking news, with Billie Eilish talking about how she was addicted to pornography starting at the age of 11 when she began consuming. And ironically, you and I have 2 days ago, or actually, it was the morning of,
Mhm.
that we were talking about. I was saying that I would love to gain some courage and just start talking about, kind of current events and how pornography is changing the world and kind of informing and adding to events that are happening around the world without people knowing that, it's that there's this peel the layers back and that porn's at the root of it or is definitely a contributing factor. We were talking about that, and then John, who's on our team, texted me that, Billie Eilish just said she was addicted to pornography. And I'm like, say what? So let's talk about it. I know you have some questions prepared and you've listened to the interview. She was on Howard Stern. I've listened to the interview. So we can both talk about it from firsthand experience hearing her. So that's really cool. So let's dig in. Where do you want to start?
Well, one thing I just wanted to say is, when Billie first started coming out and was, she got really popular, she wasn't, she really did talk about depression and being, having a lot of issues with, just her body image, just being depressed and all these things. And now to hear that this is something, and it's a correlation of why that was happening. So
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I mean. So thank you for clarifying, because that's what I mean is that we hear things in the news or we see things, and we can dig in a little on some other things if we want to stir the pot. I don't know how much we're going to stir the pot here today. But then, people go, oh, Billie Eilish is depressed, but then there's no discussion of pornography in the mix. And then 9 years later, when she's like, oh, yeah, remember back then when I was all emo and depressed and I wore giant clothes because I had body image issues. Guess what? I was watching porn the whole time.
mhm.
So, and I would really love this. Anybody who's a parent out there and is listening, please stay with me until the end, because you can use this Billie Eilish incident to talk to your own children about pornography. And I know we're going to get into that, but it needs to be talked about. And, we're ignoring the fact, all of us, except for me and you now, me and you and about four other people are ignoring the fact that it's a major contributing factor to a lot of the problems that the world is having. So, yes. So, thank you for putting it that way, because
And
that's
even
great.
her being completely so close to her brother and telling her brother everything. This was one thing that she didn't, or was scared to talk to him about, so it really is something that it should not be an issue that you wait for your kids to come tell you, because that's not going to happen. You need to bring this up to your kids. And this is a question for you, Dr. Leigh, is, at what age should a parent talk to their kids about porn?
Yeah. Well, we know that the average age that kids find pornography is now down to 8 to 10. And it used to be 11 and 12, but eight's a little young. But there is a book out there that I can't remember the woman's name who wrote it. First name's Kristen, and she runs an organization called Defend Young Minds. And she has a book that's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And so we already have a playlist on my YouTube channel planned for the new year on how to talk to your kids about porn. We haven't gotten there yet, but we are going there. But you can use that book as a springboard, and you can just talk about the concepts of, sometimes you see things on the internet that are not good for your brain, from my standpoint. And explaining to kids, when you see people naked doing sexual acts, you don't have to describe any of it, but if you see people's private parts, and honestly, I don't really even love that term, but if you see it on the screen, that's not good for your brain. So don't continue to watch it. And in that book, it talks about good pictures and bad pictures. And I think that's a really nice way that you can introduce that to kids that are young. But And you can also cover kind of all manners of things that are bad for their brain on the internet, because I don't know the percentage, but a lot of what's on the internet is not good for you. If you're watching violence, if you're watching, all kinds of inappropriate stuff. So you can just tell kids, when you stumble upon something inappropriate, and especially pictures where people don't have their clothes on, get out of there as fast as you can, because it is bad for your brain. And I want to point out, Billie Eilish said, porn destroyed my brain. Those are the words she used. And the reality is, it's true. Porn destroys your brain. So teach your kids it's bad for your brain. Your brain is the supercomputer that runs your mind and your body. When you see those pictures, it can harm your brain. Bounce back out of there.
And, one other thing she talked about, TikTok being so, you know, based upon kids. That was really, parents don't seem to think that that's a bad thing because they're just watching short little snippets. But, one thing that Billie Eilish said in the interview was, she said, because I've been trying, or I've been doing so well in trying to have a healthy sex life, it's sad that kids are being exposed to the trends. There is, they have these challenges that go out, and this isn't necessarily a challenge, but a lot of the same music is used and a lot of the same things are used over and over. So with that being said, they have
Oh yeah,
one
it's
that
popularizing, it's normalizing
absolutely.
it. I love music. I absolutely love music. So my kids love music because I've always listened to music. It's like hard to find a song that's not completely sexual.
Mhm.
And so like even it's become normalized for me, and my heightened awareness around this stuff is, off the off the charts, through the roof compared to other people. So it's like, and I always have my Alexis playing any Dojo Cat song that comes on. Like, I actually like Dojo Cat, but it's like, Alexa, next out. You know what I mean? But my kids know all the words. So it's like ridiculous, and it's just become normalized. TikTok, my kids aren't on TikTok, thankfully. We've had the discussion. They're on Instagram, which we can talk about that. So, anyways, last night in our holiday program, yesterday afternoon, someone brought up this very topic. Like, this is socialization. This is where socialization's happening on all of these different platforms. And it is someone who was struggling with pornography addiction. That's what the group meeting was yesterday. And he's like, that's where everybody is. So that's where I have to be. Well, no, you don't. Like, you feel like you have to because that's the way society is creating things. But we know from history, like, if you do what everybody's doing, a
Mhm.
lot of times that is not healthy for you. And so, again, TikTok can be a place that leads kids in that direction. So can a lot of the social media platforms. But at the same time, you can use TikTok in a different way. You can stay out of all those feeds. People don't understand that. Then what I said yesterday was Dr. Daniel Amen, who's a mentor of mine, has a huge following on TikTok. So I go on there and watch, not that I've only done it once, honestly, but I could, when I go on there, I can watch him and come back off. So, like, if you have a healthy brain, you have the ability to go on to these things in a healthy way and come back out. If you don't have the ability to go on these platforms in a healthy way, you need to stay out because they're just not good for us. That's what Dopamine Nation, the book Dopamine Nation, who I interviewed Dr. Anna Lemke, the whole point is just being in there is flooding your brain with dopamine. All the scrolling and looking, searching and seeking behavior, finding something that gives your brain a hit, moving on.
Oh,
It's all
wow.
just really bad for all of us. And that's not something I do at all. And I'm teaching my kids to, because, this is where we're at, to use it a little and come back out into the real world so that you can keep moderation.
Absolutely. And one other thing that she said that I thought was really interesting, she said, how am I supposed to learn how to have sex? And this was her education booklet, I guess you could say. This is, but one of the things that she learned was BDSM. And maybe you can elaborate exactly what that is.
Yeah, and I won't elaborate too much because I try not to say anything triggering and to lead anybody towards anything that's bad for them. But and she said it in the interview and, in the articles too, because we've read the articles that are out there. But basically, it has a lot of violence in it. So she's watching violent sexual acts. And we know, just to back it up from more science that we're aware of in our team here, Jamie and I, is that just regular, quote unquote, regular porn, the 5 acts that are watched the most in just your old regular porn are violent. And then a study proves they include an element of violence towards women. So when Billie Eilish said, she's like, when I was growing up, I didn't really get this, but now it's awful for women. She said she used to think it was empowering for women, but now she realizes the women that are in porn aren't healthy women. They're there, either they're coerced to be there or they're there because they're unhealthy. And that's where they ended up, unhealthy emotionally and sexually. So she ended up escalating. So at the end of this podcast, we're not going to be on too long. We're going to hit some main points. Point number 2 that I want to make is that porn escalates for everybody, for just about everybody. If you're the rare person that hasn't escalated, then that's a really positive thing. For the vast majority, it escalates. So she talks about how she started watching porn and she ended up in these violent genres. And then it didn't do anything for her unless she watched really hardcore violent scenes. So then she hadn't even had sex yet. So when she went to have sex for the first time, she thought the violence was okay. And she brought it into her first sexual experiences, but she didn't necessarily bring it in. She makes this point. So I wanted to talk about it as a woman, she thought it was okay. So she allowed it. She didn't tell her first partners, no, I don't want to do that. So this is really important because, this is different for men and women. Men are becoming completely hypersexualized and looking for those acts. Women are being taught to be the recipients. And so, it's really important that people figure out for themselves what they enjoy in a healthy way and seek that out with partners and not in the screen, because it damages all of that.
And that's exactly, one of the things she said. She said, do you consenting during sex, and it's not really consenting. It's just being open and honest with your partner and letting them know what you are comfortable or not comfortable doing. And I think that is the healthy way.
Yeah, and she was cute. She was cute. She's like, it's not that glamorous when you're in the middle of being with someone and you're like, is it okay if I do this? It's not glamorous. So
I'm asking for permission.
Exactly. You really should get consent. And that's why, her point was, it's not consent at the beginning. It's consent all the way through. If you're going to try to throw some fancy stuff in there, you have to be able to go, okay. But, my point about that too was she said yes-ish because she was taught that she's supposed to say, and her point was she wasn't asked for consent, but she was going along anyways because that's what she thought was what it was supposed to be. So she's like, at that point in my life, I would have just said yes anyways. But, now looking back, she's like, not only did it destroy my brain, it really ruined that sexual template, which those are my words, but that's what she was saying. And something I thought, so just to back up for a second, because, point number 2 is that porn escalates. Going back to point number 1, which I didn't really clarify, is that we need to talk to our kids about this. So yesterday when I found out about this, I talked to each one of my kids. And so my kids I didn't talk to my oldest daughter because she doesn't live here anymore, but I talked to, my 17, my 16, my 15, and my 11-year-old. And so is 11 young? Yeah. But Billie Eilish was 11 when she found it. And a way to do it is to ask kids what they know and to validate that, not tell them anything about BDSM for sure. Tell them that. So I said to my youngest daughter, because I don't talk about the essence of work with her a lot. I said, what I do for work, right? She's like, yes, Patty. She calls me Patty. Whole world will be calling me Patty now. She goes, yes, Patty. And I'm like, I said, well, can I tell you something about work? So, I kind of asked her if it was okay to share, because now she knows something, emotionally challenging probably is coming at her. And she goes, sure. And I said, well, Billie Eilish, went on an interview today and said that she was addicted to porn from 11 years all through her teens. And you should see her eyes pop. And I said, I wanted to tell you that because you're 11. I said, I know you already know that it's bad for you, but I also wanted you to know that this can happen to anybody, even Billie Eilish. And then I told my son who's 15, and he's like, explains why our music's so bad.
Wow.
And I wanted to also say, it's not like I'm the world's biggest Billie Eilish fan. I like her, but I'm not here because I think it's so cool that Billie Eilish said it. I'm here because we are going to start talking about porn trending in the news. And the day we decided, it was amazing that, someone who really is at the age where they're most impacted. I wanted to make one more point, and then we can throw it back to you, is that we know from the science that the biggest consumers of pornography are between the ages of 12 and 17. So she's the demographic. And it's more men, way more men than women, but in that age group, there's more young women than ever before. So it's still mostly young men, but more women are getting sucked into it. And she said it in that interview. She felt like one of the guys. So she wanted to be one of the guys.
It
So
made her feel cool. It made her feel cool, and that she knew what she was talking about. And at that age, feeling like you are part of the team and part of the crowd, that's a really, it's a tricky subject, because you want to be liked, you want to be part of the team, but it's what it will do to you later is the point. And
at what cost?
exactly.
And I'm raising all these kids, so I've had conversations with them, not about porn, but about different times when something felt incongruent to them, and they would have to. Some of my kids are good at it, some are not, actually. So I've had this experience with kids that have the strength to do it and others that don't. Is that when your friend's doing something that you don't think is good or a good idea, having the strength to at least just go, you know what, it's not for me, and take a little heat on the end of, that, especially when it comes to young men. I'm still reading Justin Baldione's book, Man Enough. I keep reading it when I get stuck in traffic. So it's not been a fast read. It is very good though. And in that book, he talks about when you're a young man, he's like, the code of young men is to tool on each other. They tool on you when things are going wrong for you. They tool on you when things are going right. And he was saying that he was skinny and scrawny, and he got tooled on for being skinny and scrawny. And then he got so jacked that he had 6-pack abs and the biggest biceps of anybody. And then they're like, put your shirt on, man, tooling on him for being in such good shape. So the point is, if your friends are, this is a story from my son, Declan, he was out with friends at a sleepover, and he came home the next day and he's like, I'm locked out of Tinder from when I was younger. This is an important point to make too for kids. I go, what are you talking about? You can imagine. And he's like, yeah, everybody was on Tinder and I couldn't get in. I'm like, thank God, first of all. And, I've discussed porn with him before. He hasn't made the leap from porn to dating apps. I'm like, dude, Tinder's terrible for you.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's not. I go, dude, I know the science behind it. It decreases self-esteem. You compare yourself to everybody. You get rejected. It's it is proven to be destroying young men's self-esteem. So stay locked out, my friend. But he was trying to, because he's with this group of dudes who are all on Tinder. And he actually has a lot of inner strength. And this goes back, and I'm going to throw it back to you, to another point. This is going to be point 3, is that Billie Eilish said she didn't understand it was bad for her. She had no clue. So she's doing it to be cool. And she just literally didn't know it was bad for her. Just like, my son I talk to porn about all the time, doesn't get that extends to dating apps, doesn't get that extends to people on social media.
And then when, one thing she said is when she did get intimate with somebody, it wasn't satisfying because her perception of what it was supposed to be was completely, not obviously what she's been watching for so many years. And not only that, but to compare herself to the women that are performing in their bodies, just the certain things that, the um
Yeah, for sure. Like
grooming, I
some,
guess you could say,
yes, yeah,
nice
exactly.
way.
Yeah. And some, a gentleman already put a comment on our channel like, oh, you're wrong, Billy. That's what bodies actually look like, and I shouldn't say it in my snotty voice, but like, her point is valid. Like
Mhm.
the majority of women's bodies aren't like that. And we know the people who are performing are going to extreme lengths to look like that, and very bad lengths that they're going to. So, it's just not healthy for anybody to have to compare. Now, on the other end, I talk to young men all the time who are really distraught because they have a girlfriend, she's beautiful, and they're not that into her. And people want partners. So this is it, there's a couple guys that I read the comments with the voice, but the majority are people who are hurting and struggling. And they're like, I thought I want to marry her, but, things aren't just going right in the bedroom. This isn't one person. This is a lot of
A
people I've
lot
talked
of
to in the
people.
last
Mhm.
week. And they're young and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, you have to stay out of the screen. And then you have to give your brain time to unwire what is arousing for you. And so think about that ripple effect. It's going to trash relationships. And it doesn't even, we don't even have to cross the bridge of marriage, just coupleships, partnerships. People want partners. They want that in their real life. And, I think she's a really great example of how, it went from her teenage years consuming it to trying to do it to realizing it's not sustainable and it's making her feel awful. She's quoted as saying, it made me absolutely miserable.
It really was, and I talked to my daughter about it as well, and she was just, especially knowing what I do now,
Yeah.
it was this light bulb, like, wow, this is something that really happens. But what's funny is if we're watching a movie and there's a sex scene, she's like, turn it off, I don't want to see it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I know that if we probably weren't there, there would be more of a, oh, let me, because it's the curiosity that, what is
Oh, totally. Totally.
obviously that
Absolutely.
dopamine is going to be dumped when they see something like that, and it's going to make them want to see something else.
Absolutely. I mean, our brains are wired for sexuality. So when we see it, it is, it does light that center, that reward center up in your brain. So it's just not natural though. It's supposed to be lit up from a real experience, not from the screen. And actually I was telling my husband about this, and he's like, Howard Stern's a huge proponent of porn. He's like, he's listened to Howard Stern. And again, I could take Howard Stern or not. It's not that I like him or not that I dislike him, but he's like, he's always talking about porn. He's like, he tells people where to go get free porn. He has porn star performers on, and and the interesting thing in the interview is, and maybe you can expand upon it, is like he agreed with Billie Eilish that the way that porn is right now, and it's developed over the years. And I said to my husband, he's like, that was a while ago. I don't know how he's talked about it lately, but he agreed that the way it is now, it has to be destroying people's brains and just changing their sexuality. And he said he has 3 daughters, and he's like, you can't imagine if they were watching porn what it would. And he joked like, if I was watching this type of porn when I was young, it would have made me into a maniac.
Absolutely. And I think it was a wow moment for him too, just hearing her, because it was a wow. It just, I heard that in his voice,
I
and
did
the
too.
fact
And
that
it
he
was
was,
it was understated, but I heard
yes,
that too. I heard that.
absolutely. I completely agree. And
That's
this
why I
is
was
just,
dying to listen to the interview after I read the articles. I'm like, I have to listen to this interview
hmm
because, and interestingly enough, it's not on his YouTube channel, which I found it in a link in the CNN article. And then I thought about 2 reasons, and this is just me, thinking about it, is that in the interview, she starts to talk about porn, and then she goes, actually, I used to watch a lot of porn. And then she says, my publicist is going to absolutely kill me.
Kill me.
She's like, my publicist is back there, and right now he's ready to kill me. And then she's like, sorry, Alex, or something, I think. Sorry, Alex, in the interview. And that's pretty awesome, because as she stepped into discussing it, she's like, I'm not supposed to be telling people that I've been watching violent porn for years and that it's really messed me up. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And I think because she was so vulnerable, to hit some really important points about this, she opened up and was very vulnerable about that. And she knows how Howard Stern is rolled. And I think that's why that was met with genuine understanding.
I completely agree with you. And you know, especially because of who Howard Stern is, and like you said, your husband said, you know, he sat there and said, you know, I watch it. There's nothing wrong, you know. But at that point, it truly was a wow moment, and I think for a lot of us too, it you know, we felt the same way. It just this is an eye opener, you know, and hopefully people will start to talk about it more, and it
Yeah,
won't be
totally.
such taboo
Yeah, and in
as
that
it
interview,
has
she
been.
said she told her mom like that. She told her mom, she's like, our family's really open about this stuff. So she said she told her mom inadvertently. This is so cool. She told her mom that her friends' moms don't let them watch porn. And her mom's like, what? You are watching porn? And she's like, yeah. And her mom's like, why? And she's like, so I can learn about sex. So it's pretty wild, because then her mom's like, don't watch it. It's really bad for you. And so then, she's young. So,
Hmm.
like, most kids won't approach their parents with that information.
No,
Most parents
no.
can't receive that information and sit there in the conversation. And, to get to another point, I forget what number we're on, but another point is that the way we address all of this is through growing up our emotional maturity, or our emotional intelligence. Daniel Goldman, I think his name is, uh, has pieces that go into emotional intelligence, being able to handle emotional things, and being able to self-regulate, being able to be self-aware, but then being able to meet people in difficult conversations without losing it and wanting to either run, it's either fight,
Fight or flight.
flight, or
Hmm.
freeze. And so many people freeze or in the conversation. I always talk about my poor parents. But like my parents just freeze. They just let me they just hop over it and get back to talking about easy stuff. And so that's like the default mode. It's interesting. So as a parent, if you're still with me, parents, is think about which one you want to do. Do you get mad and yell at your kid? That's
Hmm.
fight. Do you cruise on out of the room when the conversations get hard? That's flight. Do you freeze and then just make it go away?
Hmm.
Emotional maturity is being able to sit there for a minute and go, okay, let's talk about this. What do you know? And what's going on? Now I want to encourage people out there, if you're stuck in this porn cycle, like millions and millions of people are, and I was wondering how Billie Eilish got out of it. Do you know how she got out of it?
I was trying to look and see, but I was not successful. I know she is doing therapy, and I that probably is you know, part of it.
Yeah.
If she
So,
said it damaged her brain,
yep.
there definitely has been, and she still struggles with it. She has been honest in other things
Yep.
where, you know, she said that she still struggles with the body image, the, you know, other
Totally.
things, but it all is
I know,
tied
because I
in.
wanted Billie Eilish to know, if your brain's not healed, I can see it and I can help you heal it all the way back. But I want everybody else to know that too, not for my sake, for everyone else's sake, is that we use technology, neuroscience technology, and techniques. So the brain training headband that I'm always telling people to get, it's technology that can heal your brain. We have more advanced platforms that we can use to see how your brain is performing. So literally, if your brain's still stuck in that mode, we can see it, we can show you, and we can shift it to the optimal mode to heal it from the damage that pornography creates. And I want people to know that, because people put in the comments and they email me all the time, and my heart breaks when I see it. It says, Dr. Trish, I have been watching porn for 15 years. Can my brain really heal? And I want you to know I'm a pragmatic optimist. You've heard me say that before. Like, the answer is not just yes, it can. It's yes, it can, if you do all the right stuff and you stop doing all the wrong stuff. Use the strategies on my YouTube channel. Get the brain training headband. have your brain assessed by us, know what needs to happen to heal it, get into therapy, get into our 90-day program, get into our group coaching, get into somebody else's group coaching if you resonate with them. Do the thing that works for you and start working on it, because you can't just stop watching it and it go away. And so I did want to know, I was like, oh, what you do? Because, it is a tricky thing to come out of, but you can. And that's what I want our listeners to know. Tell somebody so that, she told her mom inadvertently, and I'm sure that began the healing process for her. And, this way, if you haven't told anybody, this thing thrives in the dark. You shine a little light on it and it starts to go away.
And you're so right about that, because the majority of calls that I receive, men are very hesitant to even tell somebody that they're calling to get help from. And one of the first things that I'll say is, anything that we talk about is going to be private. It's not going to go anywhere else. And it's like turning on a faucet. And when they are able to actually get it out, one of the things that they will say is, I have never told anybody that before in my life. You were the only person, and whenever I tell them that I know that they can do this, one of the first things they'll say, do you truly believe that I can? And it is really heartbreaking, but it can be done, because I get many emails. So not just, phone calls about that, but, many emails about when people have taken Dr. Leigh's program, how much it's helped. The Google reviews, if you go on and just take a peek at Dr. Trish Leigh's Google reviews, these men that, have actually been able to put this behind them. It is absolutely, the best part of being able to be a part of this team is being able to see those comments of, thank you, Dr. Trish Leigh, you've changed my life. And I'm
That's amazing,
flattered
right?
yeah, it is. I can't even put it into words how amazing this is.
I know you texted me someone's email and you're like, look at the email, and I text you back. I'm like, I know this is so important to me. Like, people have to understand this is a mission for me and now for you, that the world needs this. So, I text you back and I'm like, I know we are on a mission here. And it is so great when we get the emails, because some days I do feel a little crazy. Like I should just do something that's not so, it's challenging on different levels. And my husband made a comment too. He's like, maybe you shouldn't be focused on this if it upsets you, because sometimes it does upset me. It upsets me that there's so many people who are having their brains damaged without knowing. And then it has this huge ripple effect that, relationships are being destroyed. Men are trying to love their women and they can't because their brains are being pulled back to the screen. Women are leaving and they don't want to leave. And kids are being traumatized because of it. And at the core of it is this thing nobody even knows. So like, I'll come out of my office some days, like just with a heavy heart. And, usually I shake it off because the mission's there underneath it. But he's like, maybe you shouldn't do it if it's so upsetting to you. I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Have to keep doing this because it's just that important. So, okay. So here's the last thing that we can say is that, going back to the first thing that I was saying, you can share that Billie Eilish story with your kids. You can share that Billie Eilish story with your partner. You can use it as a springboard for conversation, because it does make it easy to say, this is somebody famous. This is somebody who's said they're struggling with it. You can see how it made them miserable. Another thing she says in the interview is that it gave her nightmares and night terrors, and it disrupted her sleep cycle. The health ramifications of porn consumption are massive. Like, talk about the negative ripple effect. Even if we scale it back to just the one person who's consuming it, it does damage your brain. It can give you so many health problems in terms of cognition, which is thinking, mental health or psychological, which is, all of that emotional concept of depression and anxiety. It gives you brain fog. That's what I mean by cognition and thinking. It trashes motivation. And it gives people erectile dysfunction. It gives people a lot of health issues physically in their body. So if you're struggling with any of that and you consume pornography, I came up with a new tagline: if our ads ever get going, which don't even get me started. Because we're supposed to have had ads running right now, that I created this tagline: it's probably the porn. Like, struggle with anxiety, question mark, it's probably the porn. Lack motivation, question mark, it's probably the porn. Because people don't know, it's probably the porn. And I guess we can end there, but I want you to know, if you're in this, go over to our website. We have lots of programs at different price points. We have our YouTube channel that's free, and we're putting out tons of content. We have very affordable programs in different sizes. We have personalized programs. You can work with me directly. Jamie will answer the phone, and she'll be on the other end of the email to be able to help you decide what would be best for you. And I just wanted to say one more thing, and then maybe you can talk about some of that, is that in the 90-day program, which is the program that most people need, the first thing that happens is you have a private meeting with me where you describe your situation to me so we know how we can help you. So, you do get that when you join the 90-day program. We meet and you go, this, that, the other thing's going on with me. And then I can give you shed some light on that on day one. And then as you move through the program, we're here to support you. Any other thoughts on that?
Sorry about that. If you're not able to get into the 90-day program, any of the programs, are a tremendous help. It will shed light on what you're going through. If you watch Dr. Leigh's YouTube channel, you are going to feel like she's talking right to you, because everything that she says is like, oh, wow. That's probably the biggest comments that I get is I feel like she's talking right to me. She can read my mind, and it's just because Dr. Leigh has done so much research on how this can damage the brain, and her being a cognitive neuroscientist is how to fix it. So, obviously that's the difference maker with Dr. Leigh's program. This is something that starts in the brain, so it has to end in the brain. And if it's not with technology, she can teach you how to do it without technology. Her programs are basically all of those tools and strategies in one simple place. They're short, quick lessons. You log in each day, and it truly will give you the motivation that you need to push you to leave it behind. It's a formula. It's not 3 steps that you're going to be able to just stop watching. That willpower is not enough, unfortunately. So Dr. Leigh's method is what is the key to be able to unlock how to leave this behind for good.
Yeah, cool. And we have a coupon code until the end of the year, don't we? Is
Absolutely.
that coupon code still active?
It is Trish 10, so TRISH 10. So if anybody is wanting to join the program,
yeah, and that's for 10% off. So in the 90-day program, that's a lot of money. And if you pay in one payment, you get 10% off in the first place. So that would be 20% off, which is the biggest savings we do on that. So yeah, cool.
And there's a payment plan too. So if you're not able to pay it all at once, we do try to work with you.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, because we're going to be back with more in the news, trending topics in terms of pornography consumption. So hopefully this helps you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.